There are hyenas among you, so let me make something clear. I do in fact have the B830 before the nerf award, unless I doctored this screen cap, which I could have. I didn't, but I could have. So I think I'm qualified to say that Lei Heng is a bad fight. I'm going to be specifically talking pre-nerf. I haven't played it post-nerf, and I don't think that the nerf solves any of my actual problems with the fight. It's not easy, but it's not because of its difficulty that I dislike it. What defines the malevolent feeling that oozes off of it for me is the lack of agency given to the player, the absence of decision making. You want to know what's a tough fight? Baccaud Trio. You want to know a fight that gives you agency? Baccaud Trio. That may seem counterintuitive, since easily the most threatening part of their fight is when Ahab decides that clashing is for losers and shows you the average night of the town in London, but you have the ability to decide who is going to get stabbed. Baccaud Trio is designed in a way where the setup is stagnant, but you're given free reign to knock it down in whichever method you like. It asks you, how are you going to contend with the unavoidable damage from Ahab's spray mark? How are you going to break through Queequeg's assist barrier to hit Ahab? How are you going to explain to your therapist why hearing Shah Maganera inflicts you with a 1,000-yard stare? Once you've answered its riddles, the Baccaud Trio graciously bows and exits stage left. Conceptually, Lei Heng asks a very, very simple question. How do you deal with Savage Tiger's perfected flurry of blades? Okay, hold on, there's gotta be a shorter way to say that. Oh, hell yeah. For starters, if we don't win the clash, can we take Super Tiger Killing Slash? Short answer. Come on. The long answer would be something like, originally there was an overly long calculation here, but I'll save you the padding and flash it on screen for a second. Also, I don't want to record all that. So yes, under the right conditions, Super Tiger Killing Slash isn't all that hard to tank, or at least in solos. Those solos are a fundamentally broken mess that nobody at PM is willing to design around, a gaping wound in Limbus that's better off ignored when it comes to discussing the game. But if you can't get past the stage, it's probably a good thing that you can get a support Dicey Hanlu and go and shit. But tangent aside, this is a 3 attack weight skill by default, up to 7 if you happen to get unlucky with a couple of coins. Only one ID can have Prey, and not every ID you'll like to use in this fight is going to be Wrath and Slash resistance, nor will you be getting the miraculous set of circumstances that kept the damage this low. The raw amount of conditionals that boost his power at this point too is really only kept in check by those resistances. In other words, personally I think I prefer the short answer over all this. All of this really means is that losing the clash is a death sentence, but that's fine. There's been crazy nuke skills before. He'll kill you given enough time, so just beat him before then. Done well, a simple race against the clock could be and has been extremely enjoyable. What can this fight do to make itself interesting, to really give you something to play with mechanically? Well, Lei Heng is ammo. Can you take advantage of that? Maybe stop him reloading or force him to using specific bullet types that fit our own ends? Well, he drops a round on Clash losing pretty much all of his skills. He can have a max of 6 bullets at a time, and when he's out of bullet, he still uses the coin, but he doesn't do any burn and fails to fulfill the conditional that gives him plus 20% damage and inflicts 2 defense level down. That's not like crazy, but probably worth it over time. After all, he only gets his bullets back every turn. Wait, every turn? Okay. Those are just the base bullets, the savage ones. Surely there's some meaningful way to interact with them. Right, here we go. When he runs out of Savage Tiger Mark, he summons these guys, and if you kill them, he doesn't get any more. Wait, he still has 7 slots. Goons have 60% stagger thresholds, and you get 1 turn to do it. So by focusing them, you'll take a lot of unopposed hits, and Lei Heng has a conditional which makes those especially nasty. They're bait. If you try to engage with his mechanics, you eat shit. Maybe ammo was a flop, but there's still that inner strength stack thing he has going on. What does that do? In a nutshell, it makes his big nuke skill stronger. He gets it when he wins a clash, and when he hits people unopposed. So another reason not to kill those ammo runners. He loses stack only when he spends it. This is a mechanic that punishes you for losing clashes and taking unopposed hits. Thanks, I was already trying not to do that. I don't think this changes the way I'm gonna play the game. Wait. There's still Prey. It's inflicted on the unit that dealt the most damage to him last turn, and reduces your clash power and makes you do a whole lot less damage while taking a lot less damage in return if you use a defensive skill. Prey is okay. There's some value to be gained in taking advantage of it. Getting him to waste his bullets on a Prey unit is beneficial, mostly when the last coin of his regular skills start becoming unbreakable beneath 60%. Not getting burned is good, if only because it fuels his conditionals. Though of course that means having Lei Heng attack the prey unit before you clash, which means you have to be slower than him. His speed by default is 2 to 4, and generally he won't have a crazy amount of haste. You can also use a clashable defensive skill to bypass this. Having to pick from a specific handful of IDs, have them get prey, and then have them clash with the defensive skill so that Lei Heng loses some of his bullets, all just so you don't get burned and take 50% less damage from a single cracked unbreakable coin. This boss is designed in a way where any method you find to meaningfully interact with him feels unintentional, like you found a loophole. Another example is the stagger bar. It has to be some deranged, sadistic joke. It exists to obliterate your morale by reaching it and then having Lei Heng unstagger himself. I know this because it happened to me. You see what I mean when I say that doing anything against this boss feels like a loophole? I said earlier that Lei Heng conceptually posed the question of how to deal with Super Tiger Killing Slash, but that is not the question Lei Heng asks in practice. Lei Heng does not ask anything of you, he is instead addressing the numbers that you throw at him and nothing more. He's the most inane, literal definition of a DPS check. Not only that, he wants you to draw from a specific list of IDs. I say once, because there are some very, very silly things you can do in this game. I don't know what's happening here, but I think it's funny. You want to see a DPS check done correctly? Yeah! Ricardo is infamous for being a spike in difficulty, one that often walls players when they reach him. That difficulty doesn't come from requiring a hyper-specialized team, or cheese, I guess, to beat him, or by destroying your mental faculties with 10 different passes with a Yu-Gi-Oh card's worth of text on each one. Ricardo is hard because he demands that the player lock the fuck in. The primary challenge of Ricardo is not, how can I shit out enough damage to win? It is, how do I put myself into a position where I can shit out enough damage to win? The first two ways put you into a unique scenario where you're given ample time to prepare for the big man himself, but this isn't a KQE situation where the enemies just sit there. Skull Crushing and Skull Bursting roll pretty high and inflict terrible debuffs that can easily insert you into a bad situation that can spiral out of control. The counter and guard too, if not accounted for, can both cause problems. By giving this setup period, it implores you to look into your catalog so that you can best take advantage of it. See what support or ego passes might be a boon, what infinities you might need for them, IDs you might have neglected that could have a niche, but also asks you that you perform your set to realize what you theorized, per se. Then, Ricardo himself doesn't make things easy. His role is beguile the absurdity of his clashing. From my own anecdotal experience, you're really only going to be able to contest punching and kicking. The other stuff is going to go through. That and his counter means that he can easily stagger sinners. Once you get to the stage where he's gaining Test of the Big Brother, you don't need an insane team to beat him down. But you do need a team that isn't half dead or half paraplegic from debuffs. Ricardo is a DPS check, but more importantly, he is a check of the player's team building and decision making skills. The Lei Heng fight tests fuck all of the player. He does not test your ability to team build. The resistance are so rigid that you are either running exactly what the game says you should, or running something universally powerful. He doesn't test your decision making skills. There are simply no interesting decisions to be made. No mechanics to engage with, nothing there. Tango Cleaver, I hardly know her.